morning of November 4th, 2010. Everything at Singapore's Changi Airport seemed routine. The skies were clear, the air calm, and operations were running smoothly. That day, Qantas Flight 32 was scheduled to fly from Singapore to Sydney, just over 7 hours across the skies. On board were 469 people, expecting a typical long-haul journey. But minutes after takeoff, what began as an ordinary flight would spiral into one of the most serious mechanical emergencies in modern aviation history. Passengers were relaxed, some chatting quietly, others browsing through magazines or dozing off as the aircraft climbed steadily into the sky. The Airbus A380, the largest passenger jet in the world at the time, was flying smoothly. Its advanced design, 4 Rolls-Royce Trent 900 engines, and complex redundancy systems made it one of the safest airplanes ever built. But just 4 minutes after reaching cruising altitude, around 37,000 feet, everything changed. A sudden, deafening explosion erupted from the aircraft's left wing. Engine number 2 had suffered what's known in aviation as an uncontained engine failure. The term is as severe as it sounds. Instead of simply shutting down, the engine exploded violently from within, sending metal shrapnel ripping through the wing. It was no ordinary malfunction. This was a cascading system failure. The force of the blast damaged the fuel system, punctured multiple fuel tanks, severed hydraulic lines, tore through key electrical circuits, and even compromised flight control surfaces. Inside the cockpit, alarms began to scream. Warning lights lit up across every display. The pilots, Captain Richard de Crespigny and his highly experienced crew, were suddenly dealing with more than 60 caution and warning messages. The aircraft was losing fuel rapidly, its hydraulic power was compromised, and 2 of the remaining 3 engines were no longer functioning at full capacity. And yet, the aircraft remained in the sky, stable, flying against the odds. While many flight crews might have turned back immediately in panic, the crew of QF-32 took a different approach. They calmly entered a holding pattern over the ocean near Singapore. Their goal: assess the full extent of the damage before attempting a landing. This decision gave them time, valuable time, to make sense of the chaos unfolding inside their aircraft. The investigation into the damage took nearly an hour. The crew, using every checklist, manual, and piece of experience they had, began analyzing what still worked and what had failed. They realized that multiple backup systems were now offline. The landing gear would have to be lowered manually. The flaps, crucial for slowing down during landing, were partially inoperable. One engine was completely gone and 2 others weren't performing normally. Using the onboard LDPA, Landing Distance Performance Application software, they tried to determine whether a safe landing was even possible. When they input the data, overweight by more than 50 tons, partial flap deployment, reduced braking capacity, the system gave no result. It simply couldn't compute a safe landing distance. That was a chilling moment. But the crew didn't give up. They tried another approach, removing the wet runway condition from the calculations. This assumption, based on the dry runway at Changi, finally produced a result. They could land, but they'd only have 100 meters of runway to spare. At 11:45 a.m., after almost 2 hours of crisis management, Qantas Flight 32 lined up for final approach. The landing gear, dropped using gravity alone, locked into place. As the aircraft descended toward the runway, the flight deck was tense. Every member of the crew knew that this would be no ordinary landing. They were coming in fast, about 35 knots above normal landing speed, because the flaps weren't fully functional. On touchdown, 4 tires burst from the stress. The brakes overheated instantly, glowing red-hot under the immense load. But the aircraft stopped, barely. Then came the next challenge, shutting the aircraft down. Engine number 1 refused to power off. With fuel leaking from the damaged wing and heat radiating from the brakes, the crew feared the worst, a fire or explosion. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft. The cockpit coordinated calmly with fire trucks and safety teams on the ground. Instead of ordering an immediate evacuation, which might have put passengers in greater danger, Captain de Crespigny made another bold call. Hold the evacuation. Everyone would stay on board unless fire broke out. Rescue vehicles sprayed the engine with fire-suppressant foam. Finally, the rogue engine flamed out. The danger passed. Slowly and in complete order, the passengers disembarked using a set of stairs. Not a single person had been injured, but the incident was far from over. Down on the ground, in the Indonesian territory of Batam Island, fragments from the failed engine had rained from the sky. A large piece landed near a schoolyard. Others struck homes and cars. Miraculously, no one on the ground was harmed, but it was clear that what had happened in the air had massive implications, not just for Qantas, but for the entire aviation industry. Investigators from the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, working alongside engineers from Airbus and Rolls-Royce, began examining the failed engine. Inside the wreckage, they discovered a tiny component, a stub oil pipe, with a fatal flaw. It had cracked under pressure. But this wasn't a sudden break. It was fatigue cracking, the kind that develops over time through repeated stress. Worse, the flaw originated from a manufacturing error. During production, the oil pipe had been drilled off-center. One wall of the pipe was too thin. It was only a matter of time before it failed. When it did, hot engine oil sprayed inside the Trent 900 engine. The intense heat and fire compromised the engine's intermediate pressure turbine disc, a crucial rotating part. It shattered violently, sending large, high-energy metal fragments in all directions. One sliced through control wiring, another punctured fuel tanks. One piece even cut through the wire that would have allowed the pilots to shut down engine number 1 after landing. That's why the engine kept spinning. It was the kind of failure that modern aviation engineering is supposed to prevent. Aircraft like the A380 are designed with layers of redundancy, backup systems upon backup systems. But this time, those protections weren't enough. And the aviation world took notice. On November 10th, just 6 days after the incident, the European Aviation Safety Agency issued an emergency directive. All Trent 900 engines had to be inspected immediately. Oil pipes were scrutinized. Turbine discs were checked for cracks. Some airlines were forced to ground their A380 fleets for urgent inspections. Of the first 45 engines checked, 3 failed and were pulled from service. As inspections expanded, more problems were found. By mid-2011, 53 engines had been removed worldwide. Some had dangerously thin oil pipes. Others had no records proving they'd been properly checked during manufacturing. This wasn't just a one-off mistake. It was a systemic failure in quality control. Rolls-Royce faced intense scrutiny. Qantas demanded compensation. In June 2011, Rolls-Royce agreed to pay Qantas 95 million Australian dollars in damages, around $100 million at the time. Meanwhile, the damaged aircraft, VHOQA, was grounded for 16 months. It underwent one of the most extensive repair programs in commercial aviation history. Repairs cost approximately 139 million Australian dollars and added more than 200 pounds of reinforced materials to the aircraft's frame. The A380 finally returned to service in April 2012, but this incident left behind more than just technical lessons. It highlighted the importance of human skill, calm, and experience in aviation. Despite catastrophic mechanical failure, the crew kept their composure. They managed a failing aircraft for almost 2 hours, made critical decisions under immense pressure, and brought everyone home safely. It was one of the most impressive demonstrations of airmanship in the modern jet age. The story of Qantas Flight 32 is more than an engineering failure. It's a reminder of why pilots still matter. It shows that even the most advanced technology can fail, and in those moments, human judgment makes all the difference. The skies may be ruled by machines, but they're still kept safe by people. As long as planes fly, stories like QF-32 will be studied, not just to understand what went wrong, but to remind us what it takes to make it right.